Alright, YouTubes, this is for my friend Ground Pounder. He kind of wanted to know about grinding chains and about them losing the temper and all that other fun stuff. So what I've got here, this is a trash chain, okay? If you look at the top plates, if I was to pull this off of here, if you look at the top plates, they are trashed. My customer rocked it really hard. Now, I can do one or two things. I can either tell the customer I can sharpen it, charge them double because to take off all the rocks, build them a new one. Oop, focus. Let's see here, focus. It's wanting just to focus on. Anyway, there we go. Bring that in a little bit closer. Let's see here. Focus. Let's see here. There we go. So, it's rocked really hard. So, in order to sharpen this correctly and to feel good about what my customer has paid for, is I would have to take it all the way down to there to get it sharpened correctly. Okay, so, and that's probably one of, not even the least of the ones that are trashed. So, but what I got is I use this chain as my, like my test chain, okay, for when I set up my grinder. Like if I've been grinding really hard on chains to get them knocked down and I have to reprofile it, I use a junk chain to look at my side plate, because most side plates aren't really trashed. It's usually the top plate in the working corner right there that is garbage. So he asked me about when it loses its temper. So one of the things that you got to look for if you have a commercial guy or if you're just doing it yourself is look inside that tooth. You see there's no bluing at all in that tooth. Let's see if I can, I need a better setup for my camera, but it's okay. So you see how there's no bluing inside there? Now that isn't always a telltale sign of whether it's lose its temper. The bluing inside just means it's gotten really hot. Now if you look on top of this chain, you see all the pitch and stuff on there, and it's burnt it. So what you're looking for, if you have a clean chain, okay, let's see if I can scrape that off. Anyways, if you have a clean chain, another way to tell if it's lost its temper is if that chrome is discolored greatly. Now, and the other thing is when most people are starting to really hate shops because when they sharpen it, they'll sharpen that tooth. Look at that tooth, okay? That raker is above the cutting tooth. So, in order to sharpen it correctly, you would need to knock down that tooth. Now, I don't even sharpen according to steel. When you go to schools, training or whatever, a lot of, and like if you, because they do, when you go get certified in steel, they have all these training courses to take. One of the things that they look for, and they teach you how to sharpen a chain and how to use their grinder. Now, Buck and Billy Ray calls it the little C. Now, what he's talking about is a little tiny C from there up to that working corner, okay? A little tiny baby C. Now, still, when you take their training course, they don't even tell you to knock that part down. They tell you just to take that little piece out and make a nice little C out of it. Which is true, because if you look down the profile of the chain, that part does not even cut wood. It doesn't even cut wood. And so that is according to steel. Now, every manufacturer is different. Everybody is different. So I'm going to pause this. No, I'm not. I'm going to keep going. I want a different pointer. But right here, they call that the little C, is what Buck and Billy calls it. To still, they just call that sharpening a chain. Let's see if I can get a different pointer real quick. All right. So that means, I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. There we go. Is when they're talking, is they take it from the bottom of the side plate right there. See how it comes out right there? And it means they come in from that line and grind it up and around like that. So that's how steel tells you to sharpen it, and then they tell you to knock down the raker. Now, like West Coast Saw makes this cool little raker plate. Husqvarna makes one. I like West Coast way better. But in order to make it really cutting smooth out of a ground chain, out of hand file ground chain, so this is a little, hey, let's, I'm going to kind of teach you a secret here that most people don't want to tell you about. See the profile of that raker? See how it's rounded like that? When you knock off that raker to hit your depth, reprofile it. Don't take any more off the top, but reprofile it so it's round. And then you'll have a lot smoother cutting chain. That's why I like the West Coast raker gauges, because when you file it, it files it at an angle. So, but this is not just according to Stihl or according to Little Mechanic Shop. This is according to every manufacturer that's worth a hill of beans, is to take that raker and to reprofile it so it's more of a slope instead of flat. So what happens when it's flat is you're going to start getting more of a chatter, okay? The Stihl depth gauges is what's going to cause that, is it's going to make it flat. Or even just somebody with a grinder that just grinds it flat. And so what we're looking for, when I'm sharpening a chain, I'm looking for the worst tooth, okay? Now, if you are maintaining your chain properly, like Buck and Billy says, or anybody else, there's Logger Wade out there, pretty much anybody else, just don't listen to Wrangler Star, because he used something stupid. Wrangler Star's good at a lot of different things, but when it comes to sharpening chain, I don't think he's the best person to listen to. You even got Iron Horse, Harvey. He does really good. So anyways, so when I'm grinding a chain, see how I see on this one right here, there is still damage on that raker, okay? So this one would still need to come back here to get it sharp. So it wasn't really worth taking, so about right there is what I'd need to do to take that off. Now, this is kind of a world thing. It's not just someone's opinion, but if you got a raker or a cutting tooth that is all mangled up, right there, all mangled up, and you just take a file to it and you clean out the inside, or you just take a grinder and you make it nice and clean like that. If you don't get all that damaged tooth off, it might cut for a second, but it's still not going to cut as good as it should. And it's going to dull a lot faster because all that damage is gone. It's still there, which means the chrome plating is bad. That is one of the things that makes a chain sharp, is their chrome plating on their tooth. So now we're going to do an unboxing. I've had this box for quite some time. I'm a dealer for Forester. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to wrap this chain up here like this, okay? And we're going to unbox a brand new box of Forester chain. I've never opened it. You can still see all the dust on it. So this is their 30 FC91E. So this to me is telling me this is a 91 driver. This is their model, so it's going to be probably like the RS chain or the Oregon. I can't remember which one's Carlton. I think this is more like a steel chain, and the Carlton's more like an Oregon chain as far as the build quality. Let's see if we can zoom into there real quick. There we go. Focus. There you go. There's that. So we're going to unbox this one. I'm going to kind of do a kind of a comparison here. So, well, that's a lot of dust. I should really put this on a saw to see how I like it. So, here's a brand new chain. Ooh, I really want to use this chain now. Ooh, I should have opened this a long time ago. Look at that chain. All right, so why a lot of people don't like chains out of the box, they cut, and they usually cut really smooth, is usually they are not aggressive enough, or they've got that gullet right here that's too much. There's not enough C in it, okay? So when you're looking at a chain, I really like that design. It really can carry some oil through that bar. So when you're looking at a chain and you're like, hey, I wonder if this is any good. If you just kind of give it a quick glance and say, okay, this chain right here, I'm going to back out just a little bit right there. It looks like it's a good build quality. So something that some people may not know is Carlton chain. You can still buy Carlton chain, the new stuff. If you find the old stuff, that is some really good stuff there. Carlton chain is owned by Oregon Tool. Oregon Tool owns Carlton and Windsor. So the old stuff, Windsor and the old Carlton chain, is what everybody really likes. But they have owned, so Carlton has been owned by Oregon Tool for probably 10 years or better. So is Windsor. But let's compare my grind versus this one. So if you see how it looks right there, how it's kind of a square, we're going to zoom you back in. So see how it's not really curved. It's more straight up and down with a little bit of a beak on it. So let me find one of my chains, one of my grinds. Let's see here. Shouldn't be hard. All right, here's one. There's a good one right there. So you see how this one has more of a C, or more of a half circle into it. Now we're going to pull out this one. Now you see the difference between mine and that one. My gullet comes in here all the way, takes that out. Now people don't like factory chains because either the rakers are set a little too high or they're a little too low. Most manufacturers do this for a reason. So it stays consistent through all of their build process. Now, let's exclude the HIPAA chain because that's kind of an chain. This is a long video, sorry guys. But now you take this one and see how it's more squared. But I mean, if you were to draw a line straight from the working end, the working corner, versus, and go all the way down, there is a gullet. Focus, there you go. But it's not really hooked, okay? And my guessing, this is the raker's setup probably 20 thousandths. But they do that for a reason. It's so they can be consistent all the way through. Now, Oregon chain, they actually used to make a chain platform for race chains. but they've kind of gone away from that, from what I understand. Now this is a full house chain, so a lot of people will take that and give it a quick file on that and give it a little bit more of a gullet, and they'll hit that raker gauge and make it to where they want it, and then it'll cut a lot better. Now the difference between doing a hand file versus this is when you've got 13 chains, 14 chains to sharpen, and you get a customer that says, okay, now I do custom sharpenings, so some people will tell me how far they want their rakers, whatever. That's, I mean, to each their own, right? But when you hand file, if you're not proficient at hand filing, you start getting your angles kind of messed up. Sorry, you get to see that. You get your angles kind of messed up. I'm going to come in here. Now it matters, because if you get angles that are your left tooth and your right tooth that are severely different, it's going to cut wrong. Now the big bonus about grinding is it can set your angles just perfect. So and then there's some really good grinders out there, and then there's some crappy grinders. There's Harbor Freight, whatever. I've got a pretty run-of-the-mill decent grinder. Now when you're setting up a chain, the grinder, you can bounce through one pretty quick. Now when you're talking damage like this and you're hand filing, that takes a long time. The grinder doesn't. But if you're careful, if you're not careful with the grinder, you can just destroy this chain 100%. Now that heat, when you heat it up and you're bluing it, it only ruins a little bit of the chain. It doesn't ruin the whole tooth. Okay? It does not ruin the whole tooth. It just ruins, you know, just that little portion that got heated up. So you can take and another way is if you get a hand file or a sharpened chain from somewhere and you take your file to it and it just zings right across it, it's heated. It's gotten way too hot. But if you take enough time on that with a round file, you can get that hardness out of there. It'll also dull really quick too. It just isn't fun hand filing. And so to me, if you maintain your chains really well on your saw, if you're good at maintaining, it takes someone only a couple of minutes to file a chain down to where it's sharp again. But if you run your stuff and you rock it and you don't really care, then you're probably not in the business of maintaining your chain. You're probably going to slap a new one on or send it off to somebody like me to sharpen it. Let me show you where that angle sits. Look how close I can get to the factory angle. Now, this is not a factory angle, but it's pretty close. I was testing some things out on this one. So this one should be set about 30 degrees, and you're about, I do believe you're about 28 degrees. So it's a little bit more flat. Your working edge is a little bit more flat. But that's the honest truth. I mean, you get somebody that knows how to use a grinder, and you get somebody that doesn't know how to use a grinder, you can really mess up a chain. I will probably do a comparison here shortly after this one, because this one's a long video. I'm sorry, but this one's a wrecked chain. I mean, it's wrecked. So, but if you guys have any questions, I'm going to try to do a hand file one and comparison on speed versus grind. It really matters on who's grinding it, because there's a lot of shops that just don't care, and they don't do it the right way. Unfortunately, I've worked with some of those shops. I've actually have, see, look how clean that is. Don't look at that tip, because that tip's just oil for me doing that. See, and that's what really matters. Let's zoom in there. You can really, let's see if I can zoom in there really good. Okay, you see that right there? That's, look how clean that is. See, that's just my finger. Let's see if I can clean that off. That's just my, there you go, see? Look at that. There's not a single burnt spot on that chain. Now, is this something I'm going to throw on my saw and run? No, not even. Oh, here's another one. Let's get this one up in here. Look at that one. That is pretty. Look at that profile right there. Look at that. See, now that is as close to a factory grind as you can get it. Here's the brand new. Here's the brand new chain. Here's that one. That is the purpose of a grinder, is you can customize your grinds. If you own your grinder and you do your own, you can customize your grind to you and to your saw. Now, as a business owner, as a shop, I try to make everything consistent. So when the customer can slap on a new saw, keep cutting, and he can barely tell the difference between a brand new one and this one. Okay, I usually set my rakers for my customers 25 thousandths. If they're really bad, if there's somebody that knows what they're doing and they want an aggressive chain, then I'll probably knock it down to 30 thousandths. But I mean, look at that. That is pretty. Okay, thanks, YouTube.